kick-ass witch, putting the K in magic. I'm Joanna DeVoe, and this is another punk rock kitchen witchery video. And this time I just kind of want to talk about an idea that I have, like a little theory that I've created. I have a couple of them around incorporating raw vegan foods into your life, and I thought I'd share one of them with you now. It's a little something that I like to call the step-down method. The step-down method is about easing yourself into whatever change that you're trying to make. The first time I did it, it wasn't even about raw foods, it was about coffee. So I'll use that as my first example. So the premise is basically this. Instead of going cold turkey and like jumping into the freezing cold swimming pool, you slowly step in and get used to the temperature of the water one step at a time, and you ease yourself into whatever change it is that you're trying to make. And I also am just a big believer that lasting change is something that happens incrementally over time. And typically when people go on crash diets or they try to start a raw vegan diet with a fast, they often fail because it's a big freaky leap that they're taking, and they end up going right back to whatever they find comforting. So the first time I did this was with coffee, and the way I used to drink my coffee with sugar and milk in it. So the first step was I stopped putting sugar in my coffee, and then the next step was I stopped putting milk in my coffee, and I started drinking it black, and each step took quite a while. I didn't push myself, I just did it at a pace that was comfortable. Once I got used to something and I was like, okay, I can do this, I took it to the next level. And there are health benefits to drinking coffee. I know it has a lot of antioxidants, and most of the health risks come from consuming a lot of coffee, too much coffee, but it is mildly addictive and a stimulant, so there's always the danger in drinking coffee that you're going to need more and more and more and more, and that was me. I had to have coffee all day long. It has to be boiling hot outside for me not to have a hot drink next to my desk while I'm working, so I basically drink something hot all day long. If you do find yourself getting hooked on coffee and you end up drinking a lot of it, at my worst I was drinking like a pot of coffee and a venti Starbucks every day. And if you're that bad, it can lead to problems like increased heart rate and increased blood pressure. It can even lead occasionally to irregular heartbeats. It can impair your body's absorption of calcium and overstimulate your kidneys. So eventually it can actually end up making you more tired than actually keeping you energized, which I think was the original point to drinking coffee. So after I did that, I put myself on a program where I would only let myself have a huge mug of coffee in the morning, and then the rest of the day I had to drink tea. And then the huge mug in the morning turned into 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and then the rest of the day would be tea. The thing about tea is black tea, oolong tea, green tea, white tea, they all come from the same plant, a tea plant, otherwise known as Camellia sinensis. And there's thousands of varieties of the tea plant, but the difference between black tea, oolong, green, or white is in the way that they process the tea. Or with white tea, they harvest it early while it's still very young. But essentially it's the same plant. So when you get down to white tea, what you're getting is the maximum number of antioxidants and the least amount of caffeine. Whereas if you work your way up from green, oolong to black, you're getting the least amount of antioxidants and the most amount of caffeine. So that's the next step that I took. I switched from coffee to black tea, and then from black tea to green tea, which I hung at for a long time. I still love green tea. I still drink it quite a bit. And then I worked my way down to white tea. I just skipped oolong altogether, but oolong I guess is in between green and black. But you can take those steps down from coffee, and then when you get to white tea, if you want to absolutely eliminate all caffeine from your life, then you can move on to herbal teas, and then that's a whole other, there's so many different herbal teas. That's a really fun area to get into. And now I always start my day with, instead of a cup of coffee, a cup of hot water with lemon in it, which is really alkalizing, and I've found that that's amazing for waking yourself up in the morning. So I went from being a freaky crazy coffee addict and drinking way more than my little body could handle to drinking lemon water in the morning, and often at night I do that too. And then in between I'll just do herbal tea, or I'll add in a couple cups of green tea because I really like the flavor and it's chock full of antioxidants. And then how this applies to moving on to a raw food diet is when you start getting into pasta. Pasta is one of the most popular foods in America and probably just in the Western world in general. And it's also very, very fattening and not so good for you if you're eating just traditional white pasta. With cheese on it especially. So you can do the same thing with pasta. Just switch your noodles. If you're not gluten sensitive, maybe switch your noodles to whole wheat noodles. I happen to be sensitive to gluten. Many people are today, but that's a whole other video. So if you are sensitive to gluten, switch to gluten-free noodles. You can get brown rice pasta noodles at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and a lot of commercial grocery stores carry that as well. So just get your family and yourself used to eating the whole grain noodles or the gluten-free noodles with your pasta sauce. And then another step that you can take is to eliminate the cheese. And that is surprisingly not that big of a leap. It really doesn't add that much flavor to it. And if you really can't live without that cheese, I would say switch to almond cheese. Like the almond mozzarella is really tasty, and that's a way to improve your pasta diet. But I say just skip it altogether. Really, you're not going to be missing much by skipping the cheese. And then the next step is to start, when you make your pasta sauce, to add in garlic, onions, tomatoes, a lot of fresh chunky vegetables. You can also start laying a bed of spinach underneath your noodles, and then the noodles will heat up and wilt the spinach. It's keeping it in a kind of semi-raw state, but it's still bringing out some of the flavor and wilting it a bit. And then you put the noodles on top of that, and then the pasta sauce on top of that. And then the next step that you can take is to get a spiralizer. And that's just a vegetable slicer where you put like a whole raw zucchini or a sweet potato, something like that, in this little machine. They're very inexpensive. And then you crank it, and out comes spiralized noodle-looking strands of vegetables. It looks just like spaghetti. And you put that on your plate, so you're getting the raw zucchini or the raw sweet potato, and then you pour your pasta sauce over that. And then of course the next step to go fully raw with your pasta is to make raw pasta sauce, and there's a million recipes of that online. Just Google raw vegan marinara. And there's a lot of good Alfredo options as well, but your basic marinara is typically some olive oil, some sea salt, and garlic, and then of course tomatoes, usually both raw and sun-dried. Sometimes people add in dates for sweetness, and then you just blend it all up in a food processor. And an additional step that you can take is to quickly warm it up on the oven, not to the point of really heating it and cooking it, but just enough to make it kind of warm, maybe a little bit more than room temperature, and then you pour that over the noodles. So essentially you can just step down from eating the standard American diet version of pasta to a raw vegan dish. And that is one of the easiest dishes that you can introduce to your family, and if you use my sneaky little step down method, it's even easier. This applies to all different kinds of food. I don't know if you watched my Mexi Bowl, raw vegan Mexi Bowl video, but I talked about how I'll often take the leftovers from that and fold a collard green in half and fill it up and make a taco that way. Well, you can start with that Mexi Bowl filling and just use your regular taco crust and fill it up like that until everyone kind of gets used to that flavor, and then switch over to the raw collard green. I just believe in being gentle with ourselves and loving ourselves and treating ourselves well. The world can be a very harsh place. There's no reason to force ourselves to make these huge drastic changes, because most likely you're just going to resist that. There are people that completely jump from the standard American diet into a 100% raw vegan lifestyle. Matt Monarch comes to mind. But those people are few and far between. They are unique individuals, and for the rest of us, I think it's nice to just ease into it like a cold swimming pool and get used to it one step at a time. So there you have it, my easy peasy step down method for working more raw vegan foods into your life. Much love, peace.